Hi everyone. Just going to give everyone a few minutes and I'm going to wait for Leanne to jump on, then I'll add her and then we can get rolling. So yeah, I hope everyone's well during this time. I know Victoria started back at school this week and there's been a few hiccups there. Queensland goes back next week, New South Wales the week after. So lots of changes happening. Hi, Em. So yeah, I hope everyone's doing well. I hope you've enjoyed your holidays. As I said, we're in the first week here. It's a little bit different not being able to go and do the usual things that we do, I guess, but we will get there. So lots of people joining, which is great to see. Hi, Em. Hi, Bianca. So I am going to get hopefully Leanne can pop on in a second and then we can introduce ourselves. There she is. Hello, Leanne.
Hello, how are you?
How are you?
Yes, not bad. So I'm very
Good.
excited. My first Instagram.
Woohoo! It's actually live with someone, so it's a first for both of us. It's great.
Oh, okay. I thought you were an old hand at it, but
I've been on Instagram.
exciting.
I've never done the joint live, so this is great.
Okay.
Yeah, it's good fun.
Yes, absolutely.
We've got lots of people joining,
Lovely.
which is great.
Yes.
But yeah, so I just thought, initially I thought we'd start by introducing ourselves. I'm sure there's people that follow me that might know who you are, and then vice versa.
Yes.
So my name's Christy. I'm the face of My Mum the Teacher. I started it, goodness, nearly 9 years ago. I was pregnant with my first son, and it was just a way for me to keep contact with the teaching world while I was, out of the classroom. It's since grown, and I provide resources to teachers, and I really focus on differentiating the resources because I know how important that is. But I'm a wife. My husband's a physio, so a bit different there. I've got 3 beautiful boys. I'm primary trained, but I've had the ability to work in primary and high school now. It's I've seen both sides of the coin, which I think is really invaluable. And I have a master's in special education, which I completed a few years ago, and focus that I sort of chose was autism spectrum disorders, behaviour, and gifted and talented. And in that time I've been working in the public Catholic systems, and I did a year with Aspect, or to the Autism Spectrum Australia schools. So that's it for me. And over to you now, Leanne.
Okay, so my name's Leanne, and my background is I originally trained as a primary teacher, and but quickly moved into special education and did that for 30 years. And then I've got my eldest daughter has severe multiple disabilities. So once she was born, my life completely changed because I was on the other side and saw what it's like to be a parent. So that really inspired me to go back and do my special ed degree, because at that stage I was working in special ed but was not qualified in special ed, and I felt that that would give me more information about special education and help me to be a better advocate for my daughter. And once I did that, I did a master's, and then I went on and did a PhD and worked in universities, but then went back to the classroom but left the classroom setting in 2018 and been focusing on professional learning for teachers, for assistants, and also I work with parents who wish to advocate for inclusion for their child. So that's me.
Great. And that's how we came across each other, was a Facebook group, funnily enough.
Yes.
So it's, if you can look up our Facebook group later. So, you know, really good one to be a part of, great people in their great minds, and the discussions are always really important. And I think it's good that we've got people from all over Australia in there, because we see how people do things in different states and territories, which I think adds to the discussion and everybody's, I guess, you know, abilities to cater to those kids. So
yes,
yeah, it's been great. So I reached out to Leanne because I'd been seeing a lot of teachers asking questions, because obviously we've been thrown into the world of online teaching very rapidly, and a lot of teachers are questioning how to keep providing for those students with additional needs, whether they're in a mainstream setting or a special setting. And I just thought it'd be a really good discussion to have, you know, and Leanne's one of those great people who has had such a variety of experience. You know, it's wonderful you've been able to come on and chat with me, and just help people out, because I have so many people that, you know, wanting to do the best for their students in this new environment that we find ourselves in.
And thank you for the invitation. So yeah, I'm really excited to be here, and you know, and because you are so knowledgeable yourself, and you know, have contributed so much to the Facebook group with all your ideas. So yeah, so it's wonderful to have this conversation.
Yeah, good. So I mean, Leanne, we've been sort of talking about what we thought was important. We'd looked at, you know, I'd been getting a few questions in from people, and if anybody watching this wants to jump in with some questions, we'll have a bit of time at the end as well. But I mean, for me, we just need to take a breath and give ourselves some grace. I think, you know, we're so caught up with trying to do it all. And look, teachers are renowned for being perfectionists. You know, it's such a wonderful attribute, but at the same time, it can weigh us down. And, you know, sometimes we get things out there and just give it a go. And I know that we all want to do our best for our kids and give them the best opportunity possible. But yeah, I sort of think that we've just got to look at our kids, look at our families, our situations, because we're kids, we know our families, and we've got to go with what we think is going to be best for them. What about you, Leanne? What do you think, you know, in this time?
Because I'm a mother of now a young woman with disabilities, but I'm in a lot of parent groups, and what the parents are saying is that they're feeling like they're under an enormous amount of pressure, and it's a pressure cooker situation for a lot of families. And for those families who have a child who medically has issues, you know, I'm aware of a lot of families, and my family's one of them, who self-isolated fairly early on, because my daughter also has respiratory failure. So, and there's a lot of families in the same situation. So they self-isolated early on, and the focus is really on survival. You know, of course education is important, but, you know, a lot of parents are just under so much pressure. So education is secondary here. And I think the most important thing for a teacher to do with families is that relationships and connecting with them and just seeing where they're at. Because a lot of parents, even today, there was one mum who just poured her heart out about really losing it with her kids. And she's someone who publicly is a very capable woman, you know, but she really lost it. And she asked the question, am I a bad mum? And he's someone who's just normally so capable and so together. And so I just wonder, you know, and I think it's much broader for a lot of mums are really, really struggling. And I say mums because they're the ones who do the bulk of the work when kids are at home and take on the job of doing a lot of the educating. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, no, it's I mean, I feel that having 3 kids at home. One who particularly is very bright in particular areas, but also has some social emotional needs that we're currently working our way through. And I'm a teacher, and I still struggle being able to provide them through what they need to, while me and looking after a toddler in the background. Like, you know, that balance is really hard, and I think teachers need to give themselves, parents need to give themselves grace. I saw someone had written that they had come from a war-torn country, and they basically hadn't had education really for about 4 years. They're now a university graduate, they're working time. You know, they said, look, in the grand scheme of things, if it's only for a few months, it's not, you know, if it's there later on, we will make up that shortfall. Don't stress so much that, as you said, we break down, we have all these issues. When is it really worth it, you know? And I think we've got to do that. But I know there's a lot of parents and teachers out there wanting a little bit more guidance on how they can cater to their kids. And I think, you know, I think we were sort of, when we were messaging before, we were talking about the barriers as well that I think teachers need to realise, parents. I know in Victoria, their platform today crashed. First day back at school, the whole there's one barrier right there with online learning that you just can't control. And so I think all your eggs in one basket, for me, you know, it's a bit tricky. You know, for that, it's all online. I think there needs to be a bit of a balance between some hands-on learning and some online.
Absolutely.
Like what, you know, we're not all on iPads or laptops all day, and we're not all in books all day. We've got that balance starting to happen now, and I think we can do that at home as well. You know, for example, my school have sent home packs, so we could go and pick them up, or teachers were dropping them off if parents couldn't get there. And that variety of resources. So there were some manipulatives in there, like and dice and board, you know, just printed board games that the teachers had made. Soundboard, and there were just worksheets, colour, you know, just Easter colouring sheets. But then bringing home the weekly plan, and there were activities online. We use, and there were activities on there as well. So there was that nice balance there. And if our internet was down or low, we couldn't, something happened, I could redirect them to, you know, one of their activities in their pack. So I think, you know, some people, I had a question that was sent to me, and, you know, he wanted to know what others were doing in terms of catering to individual needs. You know, specifically those that have a lot of one-to-one support, how are they being catered for in the Google Room or online space? And having been in other groups and other learning platforms for a few days, a lot of people are just saying we need that balance between the two. Yeah, I think if you can, send home a resource pack, send home what you would do in the classroom, you know. Send home some worksheets, send home some games that you would do in groups, get them to play those games with their parents or their other siblings. That's sort of, you know, that's what's worked for us. It's been really good. Yeah.
I think also you could, I've seen a lot of wonderful scavenger hunts, but ones that are really quite imaginative. So drawing on the resources that a family would, well, you would hope that they would have. So just simple things like, you know, find a cake of soap, or find something from the kitchen, something from the bathroom, something from the lounge room. And then you can, you know, that's an activity that they can do independently, but then they can bring that back and do that as a group where it's a language activity. And I'm thinking in my mind of students that I've taught with severe multiple disabilities and might not have a great deal of expressive language. So that's what I've got in my mind. For those students, that might be an activity that you could do. But for a lot of those students, the other thing that I'll mention is what I'm aware of, what some families are doing is with the NDIS. Now, NDIS does not do education, but what some families are doing is they're employing support workers in the home, and as part of their child's care, so they're employed to do the care of their child, so they'll be doing feeding and changing and just general care, but they also, while they're there, happen to do education. So they're not funded to do education, but while they're there, that's what they do. So I know that's a workaround for some families who are happy to have a support worker in the home, because not all families are, because they're self-isolated and they're worried about support workers. The other thing I'm aware of is that there are a number of families who have asked support workers to actually move in with them during this period of time, because they're just so worried of their child being at risk that that is what they've done to prevent any chance of coronavirus getting into their home. So, yeah, which is quite a drastic thing to do. And it's also, I would imagine, only those quite privileged families who can do that. So once again, we have that gap between families that would have the space to have a support worker living with them and those who would not. And that wouldn't work for everyone.
No. You know, I was in another chat today, and we were talking about a lot of families who English isn't their second language. English is their first language, it's their second language. But that here as well. So, you know, sending homework, but if the parents can't read to support their child, if their child can't understand it and the parents can't understand it, it's not going to get done either.
Yes.
You know, so we were looking at including visuals, you know, quite often they're off Boardmaker or, you know, simple clip art, something from, you know, grab online that just shows, well, this is a cut and paste activity. This is a, you know, or you can write this or have someone scribe it or type it. You know, there were just little things like that that I thought that's another way that we can help overcome that barrier, where, you know, you do have to, as you said, be mindful of people's situations and what is happening in their home. It's really tricky. I mean, you know, having worked in a high school now, you know, coming from a primary school where you're really in care of 30 kids and you're with them day in. High school, you could be working with 120 kids. You're going to plan for them. It's a lot of work, and it's a lot of planning and thought that goes into it. You know, a lady messaged me and just said she's had to do this. It's been her heaviest plan period of her whole teaching career, trying to get individual packs out, you know, to meet the needs of those learners. You know, one doesn't have access to technology at home, so she can't do anything with that child via technology. It has to all be, you know, hands-on. She has to somehow communicate that to the parents as well. So, you know, there's a lot of things, a lot of barriers there, but I think there's also a lot of great things now online that a lot of teachers are sharing they're doing.
Yes.
Really wonderful. It can be a little overwhelming too, because I know we're seeing so much being fired across all the social media platforms. But and we've just got to take a step back, have a breath, think about our kids, plan for them, and with them in mind and their families in mind. I mean, I know, as I said myself with my son, he's very much a routine kid, and this for him, you know, he loves school so much, and it provides such a good structure of routine. We had meltdown the first day. You know, I had the visual timetable up on my fridge. You know, we had it fairly well structured. We done some physical activity, all that for him, but we still had the big meltdown, you know.
Yes.
And I think too, that's going to happen. Parents, you know, you have the planned activities and provide everything for them.
Yes.
It still might.
And so, yeah, and I think it's really good to have structure and routine, and we know that works well for children who are experiencing trauma. And I've got to say, we're all experiencing trauma at this point in time, and structure and routine works very well for people in trauma situations, but with flexibility built in, because children are going to have meltdowns. Yep. Parents are probably wanting, you know, feeling like they're having a meltdown. You know, it's teachers, you know, it changes day by day. You know, you turn on the news and, you know, school's going back. No, it's not. Yes, it is. It's just really, really hard. And the other thing you mentioned, oh, sorry. The other thing you mentioned was about resources, because we teachers are going to have to upskill parents about how to teach. And I came across a wonderful resource, which I put on, I've had to use Instagram, but I did upload it. Dr. Paul Swan has developed some amazing resources for math. They're cards which explain how to teach each concept for parents. And it's just wonderful. So here's someone, Dr. Paul Swan, he's got a Facebook page and it's filled with wonderful, wonderful resources.
Yeah, that's, as you said, we need to help the parents, you know, learn this, because I mean, a lot of the stuff we're teaching has changed since when they did it. And look, some of them haven't done it either. I've worked with kids whose parents get to a certain point in school, you know, so there's a lot of pressure on parents and teachers, and I just, you know, this chat, I think, you know, was help, you know, provide some strategies, and I hope we're doing that for teachers. You know, if you're on watching us, let us know, give us a message, because we can see them pop up. You know, I think you were talking about before those relationships with parents too, and that's really important, having that regular communication. You know, letting when you're available to chat, you know, make it very clear that you are available between certain hours. I don't want parents not emailing you at 11 o'clock at night. You know, just that's not fair, and that you wouldn't think that that would happen in a normal school day situation. Providing those supports and that guidance for parents is really clear. I know someone was talking about they had a sheet for the students that the students read, and then they had one for the parents. So it, you know, just explaining in a little bit more, I guess, adult lingo what that child was required to do. And as you said, you know, giving them cards, giving them a what, you know, what it would look like. You know, in education terms, a woggle, what a good one will look like. And yeah, I think just, you know, some really great visual prompts as well. What have we spoken about? Oh, goodness. What else could we go on with this? Oh, I think one of the biggest tips I could give at the moment is for teachers, and it's also for parents too, is, you know, the kids might go to school for a 6-hour day. We don't actually teach them for that 6-hour day. Like, they're not in class sitting for 6 hours. So don't expect your kids to be sitting for 6 hours. You know, really only 2 to 3 hours that they're actually sitting doing work. And there can be activities that you give the kids, as you said, like a scavenger hunt, where they're getting up, they're moving, but they're still doing work. And I think that's really important. We try and embed that into our online teaching, that there are going to be these movement activities that we can still get them to do at home.
And even when teachers are teaching students online, you can build in movement, you know, jump up and down 3 times, you know, and then sit down and, you know, get up and wiggle, just like you would do in a classroom, you know. So there's a lot of things, you know, so yes. So when we're teaching students on the computer and they're sitting there, you know, we might have morning meeting if that works for, you know, I know some schools it works very well doing the online there, you know, some teachers are saying they're doing a morning meeting, but it doesn't work all the time. But yeah, just building activities into that is still important, just like we would do in a classroom, giving them brain breaks.
I mean, I think my boys told my husband, because I was teaching one day, I picked up a day of work, and they showed him, I think it's Go Noodle or one of those, and they were getting him to do it. So then, you know, we had that all the time. So they showed him, and then that became part of the routine. We did this for so long, 20 minutes, and then we did a Go Noodle, and then we went back for 20 minutes. You know, and I think trying to break up the workload into those short increments too, like something where they're going to again, we wouldn't expect that in a classroom. Even when I'm teaching, gosh, when I was in high school, I to do that. You know, you can sort of, when you feel like you've got to get through so much content, you want to do that, but you end up losing kids, especially those ones who have intellectual disabilities or who have behavioural needs. They find it very hard that period of time and concentrate. I know I had another ask, you know, she said she'd like some tips for how to help student focus in the online learning space, particularly those kids with ASD. She's been having trouble while she's been teaching them online, getting them to maintain. And I think it is just keeping it short and sweet, embedding movement into it. You know, providing visuals as well. There's been some, you know, great resources put up where you can have a timer that counts down. Or, you know, a stand timer like we would in a classroom. Okay, we've got this long to do this amount of work, or, you know, we'll be finished. I love using the first then boards. You know, print these off, send kids, you know, right, you do this for 20 minutes, then we're going to have iPad time or whatever their motivator is, put that on there. And, you know, generally they'll do it. If that reward, they'll do that level of work. It's amazing.
And I'd like to mention another resource. Christine Reeves, she's from the US, but she has a website. What is it? Autism Classroom Resources, I think it is. I should know because I'm also a member of her group. She's got a membership group. She has wonderful resources, and she has developed resources such as a first then chart that has all instructions that you can give to parents, so that you're not having to explain it or work all that out. So so she's another one to check out, Christine Reeves. She has some wonderful resources.
Fantastic. Yeah, there's just some amazing people out there being able to tweak their existing resources and, you know, put it into, you know, the new learning environment which we're all facing, which is just amazing. I know Australia, she's based in Canberra. She's on Instagram. I think it's Miss Goody Two Shoes. She's a creative arts teacher, and she has done 10-week, I think it's 10 weeks about that, and they are all dance sort of and music related activities. So you know, she gets the kids to do the like learn dances. So she's filmed herself and other staff members doing a dance, and the kids can learn it by copying them, film themselves doing it, send it back to them. I think there's an activity where there's, you know, the cup activity where you know, tap the cup, turn it, like there's a whole song and routine around the cup song. I forget what it's called. But she's made that available to teachers, and that I just thought is fabulous, because that's one of the areas too I think that's lacking, is that creative arts, which
Yes.
kids really enjoy. You know, that dance, movement, singing, dancing, drama.
Yes.
That's another way to get our kids up and moving. So yeah, she's another, that resource is available, I think, on Teachers Pay Teachers to download. So depending on how long we're doing this for, I mean, I know New South Wales is apparently going back to the classroom in week 3 of term 2. So
Right.
that's just come out today, but again, we could, it could turn.
It's day by day.
Teachers have been planning for the first 5 weeks to be online learning, and now they're being told they could be back in the classroom after 2 weeks. It's very, very crazy.
Yes, it's really, really challenging, because
Yeah.
as a teacher, I like to know what I'm doing. I think we all like to know what we're doing, and
Definitely.
not knowing and turning on the news and it changes. Yes, but that sounds great, that Miss Goody Two Shoes. I must look that up. I haven't come across her. But the keeping activities as far as possible, not expecting too much, you know, because we are all traumatized. And I think having that low cognitive load is really important. Just keeping it simple, as simple as you can, simple, engaging. I think that's the way to go.
Yeah. One question that I had come across, and that I've actually had myself, having a son, as I said, who's working a little bit above his cohort, is how we cater to those kids who are quite sort of away from what the rest of the group is doing, and how we cater to them. I'd spoken to my son's teacher, and with the platform they were using, she said, you know, that she couldn't, there was a way for her, apart from emailing or calling me, there wasn't a way for her to give him different work to the rest of his peers. So while they were focusing on, say, a particular area of English, he'd surpassed that. He was working on these other levels. And she's like, I know you are getting this work. And I looked at it going, he was just racing through it, and he was bored. He was bored. And you know, and I could tell he was getting frustrated, because he's like, I get it. I can do this. Like, what am I doing for 5 days over the week? And so, and I mean, look, it was just like, I'm a teacher and I'm going, right, let's do this. Let's change this, and we're going to do this, and let's do that. But I know a lot of teachers are finding the very sort of, I guess, extreme ends of the spectrum, where you've got to cater for those kids who are, you know, quite high in one area or very low in one area. You know, from an inclusive point of view, I know they're finding that very difficult in the online space.
Yes. But I would deal with that as I would in a classroom. Have, you know, the children all doing the same task but different entry points. So if you're doing a story with children, if you're doing a novel, say Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, you know, we've just had Easter, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, you might, for some children, just be working on vocabulary. You know, what is chocolate? You know, point to a picture of chocolate, something as simple and basic as that. And someone who's a child who's really quite capable could be doing quite advanced tasks, you know, writing stories and things that are much more involved. So I think, you know, as we would in the classroom, they're all doing the same task, but different entry points.
Yeah, that's right.
For the same curriculum.
Yeah, and I think the issue is, and you know, I know what's going to come out when we're all back to normal, and I think when we can review what's going on, I think there will be a big reflection on how we can do that in the online space, how we can say to these kids without making it obvious, you know, oh, well, why is, you know, especially when can see it, I think that's another concern for teachers. Well, why is little Johnny doing this when my doing it?
Mm.
You know, we know why. As you said, it's different entry point. We know this kid can do this.
Mm.
That's what, but, you know, your child needs to keep, you know, to really sort of, what's the word, get a grasp of those concepts before they do this.
Yes.
You know, and that's, I think, a hard point for teachers too. I know that's coming across the online space where parents have that as well, is tricky.
Yes.
So whether it is we just email, you know, we might just email, okay, well, Freddie, you know, it says in, you know, today's task to do, but get Freddie to do this instead, or, you know, do this. So I know with my kids, I can't remember, they'd done a couple of math activities and they'd sort of just blitzed through them. They were quite quick in the first week that we were there. So, you know, as you said, I did a similar scavenger hunt, but with the grocery catalogues.
Yes.
You know, they had to find 5 items. I gave 5. They had to find those, list the price, add it up. And then for my eldest, I said, right, well, you had this much money, how much change are you going to get?
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I think things like that are simple, are quick, and we can, as you said, different points or different exit points as well. You know, this kid
Yes.
might just the sum. Okay, let's just add this up. That's all you have to do, Johnny. But Tommy, I want you to, yeah, you've got this much money. How much change are you going to get?
Mm. Mm.
So they're just some, I guess, simple strategies from, you know, that you can cater for those, for the range of kids.
Mm. Mm. Yes, that's a good point. And I'm just thinking about other resources that I've come across. Shelley Moore, if you haven't come across Shelley Moore, she is absolutely brilliant. So check out her website. She's a Canadian and an inclusive educator. So she has some wonderful resources and has developed a template on distance learning. Probably the best template that I've come across, though, is from the New South Wales Department of Education. They have developed a template, a very simple one, on for distance education, because we don't want to be redoing our programs. I mean, we just want it recorded in a simple way. And the New South Wales Department of Education have developed that. And I've put that up on my Facebook page and in the closed Facebook group, the New South Wales one. I've mentioned Christine Reeve. Another person who's another resource is Jane Farrell Consulting, and Farrell is Farrall. She works with children with severe multiple disabilities, children who may not have expressive language or may use AAC, like an Prolo-Quotago, something like that. And she's developed some resources for literacy. Spelled Essay have decodable readers.
I saw that. Yeah, that's.
Yes, and the Tar Heel Reader, that's just some books online that are quite simple, easy to download. So they're the resources that I thought of that I think are good to use.
And I know that a few of the online readers now have the option of it being read to the children.
Yes.
So even if you've got a kid who, you know, literacy skills aren't as great, or English, you know, isn't their first language, you can say, put in there, listen to the text. You don't have to read it aloud, follow along, and they'll often highlight the words, follow along. A lot of those programs online are really amazing. You know, if you haven't heard, I know some of them, I think Disney even had it. I used to use Disney a few years ago when I multicultural. And if it was a word you didn't know, you could click on it and it would take you to the meaning of the word.
Wow.
Which was fabulous. So a couple of times, you know, kids would, what does that word mean? Okay, well, look at that word. What does it mean? And, you know, let's put it in another sentence. So there was, you know, those great tools that are already embedded in programs that we often use, but we don't probably use them in the classroom when they're reading to the kids, or, you know, when we just say, okay, in this group, go and, you know, read that book over there. Another one I was just about to talk about, and it's gone out of my head. Ooh, I've forgotten now. I'll have to come back to it.
But what I've been amazed at is the number of businesses and organisations that are offering free access. You know, Twinkle, for example, I've been using their resources. You can now access their resources for free. There's a reading program, is it Room or something like that? I saw that they're for free.
Books? Is it book?
Oh,
was that one?
Yes, Books. Something like that. Yes, yes.
Yeah, I love it. Right.
And so that's just wonderful, because these businesses and organisations realise how stressed and busy and exceptional this time is, because we haven't had time to plan. It's for those, you know, there are schools, often the elite schools, who have a lot of resources and already have done online learning, and they've been doing that already before this came along. So they were just easily able to send their students home, and, you know, and everything continues as is, really. But for students, for schools that serve communities that might be low socioeconomic and don't have those resources, you know, it's just so challenging. Hence our conversation. Yes.
It is. And I mean, I've worked, that's primarily been the schools I've worked. You know, I've worked a lot in Western Sydney and quite a few schools down here that have those, you know, populations from low socioeconomic, and, you know, working in a public school in a special ed setting, you don't get huge amounts of funding for resources, funnily enough. I think a lot of people think you don't, but especially when I went into the high school, because I'm primary trained, it was a great tool for me to go into the high school, because I could teach across the subject, but I had to retrain myself and find all new resources for teaching 7 to 10. And again, you know, I'm teaching to the curriculum, but then you've got to tweak it and, you know, find ways they can access it at their level. So I came across some really great ones. The best one that I saw, which I just got an email the other day saying they've free, is called Kids Discover. Really good for upper primary into high school. It's an American-based program, but the content is great. So they basically cover world history, general history, science, what else? There's sort of these range of topics, and then they have articles or stories on those topics. And then each of those, you differentiate the reading level. So there's 3 or 4 reading levels for each text. So say you're studying, like we were doing, medieval Japan at one point. There was, I think, I set 8 different reading tasks that they would do as part of their learning, and I could provide each of my students that same text but at their specific reading level.
Wow.
And then questions that they would answer based on that text. And it was fabulous. It was such a great resource, and they've just come out free. So if anyone watching is a high school teacher, I think Amy's just met.
Yes, she said, can you repeat the name?
It's called Discover. So go on and have a look, and I can pop the link up later. Actually, it's amazing, and just the whole set out is phenomenal, and it will actually provide you with links, you know, if you're on this article as a teacher, it then will link you to another one that you think, oh, good, well, I'm going to read that in when we do medieval Europe, or when we do this topic or that topic. So it's a really good one that I found, and I love that they differentiate texts, because I had kids that were working above stage level, at, and then below. They were all accessing the same content, all could answer the same questions. And then it also let me see their answers, and it provided me with an assessment sheet so that I could. But it was amazing. Yeah, it was great. So, you know, I could then go in, see what questions they'd got wrong. We might discuss that later, especially if, say, you know, the majority of them got that question wrong. Okay, well, let's go back and review that as a class, or, you know, one-on-one. And when it came time to doing projects, I was like, well, you guys have read that. Go back and read it again. There's some information there. It had great visuals, interactive bits here and there. So that's a really good one for, as I said, upper primary, that 7 to 10, you know, high school years. I love that. It was a really great resource.
Yes.
So just looking at the time, what have we been going? Oh, about 45 minutes. That's pretty good.
45 minutes, yes.
So we haven't got any other questions. I'm just going quick look through any of the other questions that we got. I did have one lovely lady write to me, and we had a chat last night. Oh, she was just asking, you know, what we do for those kids who, I guess, don't have a lot of support at home, don't have internet access at home. I think one in particular, they didn't want them to have internet access. They, you know, for whatever reason, the parents didn't want them to have internet access. And she was saying there was going to be that between her dropping the work for that week and then picking it up and then having the time to go through and mark it. She was sort of concerned, and I don't know, what do you think? I think that's just one of those.
That's right. Control. It's out of her control. You know, you can't, you know, you've just, that's the situation she has. So yeah, it's out of her control.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those things that I think, yeah, like in a normal situation, there's some things we can control, what we can control in the classroom. We can't, what happens at home we can't control. We can only try and deal with it when we are with that child. And that's, you know,
that's right.
Unfortunate situation we're in. As you said, when you've got families that are self-isolating, you know, for very good reasons. If we can't connect with them, or they can't do things for whatever reason, then we've just got to roll with it and make up that time, I guess, when we get them back.
Yes. And the one thing that I would like to stress for all teachers is, I was a little bit concerned because teachers are just so caring. Yes. They are passionate about what they do, and they want the best for their students. So we have to accept that we can't control what's going on. And, you know, and we know that there is going to be a much higher rate of domestic violence, and there's going to be some awful things happening. I was a little bit concerned today when I saw a teacher saying one of her students wasn't sleeping well, and she was after recommendations for this child, and people were started to suggest things that were well out of the boundaries of what a teacher does. So I think, even though things are really tricky, we have a job description and we have boundaries, and there's a reason for that. We're not qualified in other areas. So we shouldn't be, even though this is an exceptional time, you know, there were teachers who were making recommendations for medication. You know, we are not medical people. So we have to work within what we are qualified to do and within our job description. And I think that's really, really important, not to enter areas that we're not qualified to talk about.
No, and things that we can't, as you said, we can't control, we're not qualified to deal with. It's really hard. Like it really is hard when you think all we do all day is try and implement and affect change in these kids. And then and at the moment, they're home all the time.
Yes.
So anything we did that was good could be unraveling. This isn't going to be forever. We want kids back. Hopefully we'll still be able to, you know, sort of, you know, give some level of change, give them a new sense of direction, help them in some. But I think too, I know as a teacher, having come across certain situations and some kids, that you aren't going to make that difference. You aren't going to change that situation. It's bigger than you.
That's right.
We can only do what we can do, and I know every teacher out there is doing that. They're giving everything they give. They're working their butts off to provide for their but they've got it. We've got to look after ourselves as well. We've got to take time for ourselves. You know, go for a walk, go play with your kids, you know, do anything you need to do to decompress at the end of the day. And tomorrow is a new day. Try something new. If it didn't work yesterday, why didn't it work? Try something different. You know, add in more brain breaks, in more movement to your lesson. I know I saw one teacher and he was just wearing a hat. He said something different just to grab their attention.
Yes.
Fantastic. I went to a speech talk this morning and she was saying, you know, it's hard to get that level of engagement across the screen. You got to think outside the box a little, you know, and they were doing that. I think she would usually use a Mr. Potato Head. She used the on herself, you know, like
yes,
little that make it fun. Yeah, I think we've just got to keep doing what we're doing. Be open to change as well. I know that can be hard for a lot of teachers. As you said, you know, some people have had programs and we don't want to go and rewrite them and reinvent the wheel, but have to modify and adjust certain things that we do.
Yes.
And especially for our kids who do have those individual needs. Probably one thing we haven't on which I think I know that a lot of people are asking, when kids have got in, you know, those learning goals that we work with whenever we have those throughout the year, you know, how are they going to monitor and how are they tracking those if this continues, if we're still online for say the rest of this term, how are they going to be able to do that? That was their sort of biggest question, I know, for a lot of them.
Personally, I would say that at this point in time, don't worry too much about learning goals or assessment, because I think we're just getting our head around online learning. I think we've got to get that sorted out. And, you know, we've been thrust into this and it changes day by day. So I personally wouldn't be worrying too much about that. I think that's just too much to ask for at this point in time. Yeah.
And I think we're meeting our legal obligations in terms of catering to our kids if we can show that we're still adjusting the content. You know, we might not be working towards their goals, but if you can show that you are making adjustments and modifications in your teaching, and as we discussed a bit earlier, you know, looking at the entry and exit points of certain kids, you're meeting your legal obligations right there, you know.
Yes.
So, you know, if that's what people are worried about, and I think that's what a lot of people were looking at, and I know a lot of people were worried that people are just going to slip back into this mode of we just give kids this, and if they can't do it, then it's too hard. Go sit in the corner and do it, or go do iPad.
One of the things that a number of parents have actually said to me that they would like their children to do is, and I thought this was interesting, these are parents who have always been very focused on their children learning academic skills at school, but parents have actually said to me, because they're the ones who are the facilitator of their child's education now that they're at home, that they want their child to learn more life skills or enrichment skills rather than academic skills. And many years ago, in the early 2000s, I remember there was this thing called the homework grid, where homework was at that point in time a bad thing, you know, and we started sending home, instead of doing academic homework, we started sending home, and it was a grid. There was a choice of 9. So throughout the week, children could choose things like help with the dishes, do the vacuuming, take the dog for a walk, things like that. And I think that is perfectly reasonable, and particularly if that's what parents want. Yeah.
Oh, definitely. And I mean, I know, having young children, that's massive for us. That, you know, and my kids don't really have any learning needs, but I want my boys to grow up and be independent men. I want to be able to kick them out the door at 18, 19 and go, right, they're grown, and know that they can wash the dishes. They can go to the grocery store and with a certain amount of money be able to feed themselves, make a good healthy meal for the week or whatever it is. And just be responsible. And that's, having worked in special ed, having had, you know, personal dealings with it, I think that's really, really important. I think, as you said, some parents can really focus on the academics, but I think this is also, this situation has opened a lot of parents' eyes to, oh, well, my kid doesn't actually know how much a weekly grocery shop is. All right, well, let's break it down. Why is it this much? Or, you know, for kids that are, you know, have quite severe intellectual things, it may just be setting up a new routine, getting out of the house, doing the simple chores, doing a load of washing, making the bed. Those things that normally we're rushed and we don't bother because we're trying to get out the door and do our daily routine. Now we've got that time to focus on it. So, yeah, I'm with you. I like the old homework grid. I've used them before. I think they're great. And I think they're actually making a comeback. I've seen quite a few of them floating around at the moment, that a lot of people are using that type of learning resource for the online or for the remote teaching environment, that they're saying, you know, read a family member a chapter from your story this week. Then another one is, do the dishes or help with the groceries, or, you know, all these little daily things that really are just everyday life that I think we may have when we were, you know, pre-COVID-19.
Yes. And Christine Reeve, I mentioned her before. I really like the things that she's developed. She has a lot of visuals around life skills. So, you know, stepping you through how to wash the dishes or how to sort the laundry and all that sort of thing. So a lot of visuals, and she also has a lot of social stories. So she's someone to look out for, because I really like the resources that she's made.
That's great. Yeah, well, I'll make sure I provide a link to her for anyone that is wanting to check her out and check her resources. I know she's got quite a few that be invaluable, even in a, you know, the mainstream everyday kids.
Yes.
A lot of things with those kids that would be, you know, a great lifelong activity. So, but well, I think that's it. If anybody is online, questions, we haven't had any fire up at the moment. I'm just checking, but I think we had one before, and that was about it. But yeah, thanks for coming on, Leanne, and having a chat with me. That's been
thank you. I've really enjoyed this.
Yeah, have to make a thing of it.
yeah, I'd like that. Yes. So thank
really
you
good.
everyone for listening.
Yeah, hopefully it's provided some guidance and clarity for anyone that was feeling a little bit overwhelmed and anxious, especially starting a new term in a new learning environment. I hope we've helped you out, and we may well be back with some more depending on what happens. Amy's just jumped on. Thanks, Amy. Thanks for coming in. Thanks, Mickey. Thanks for stopping in and listening to us. It's been great.
Yeah.
All right, everyone. Good luck with term 2. Those of you who are in the classroom or heading back next week or the week after. And be sure to follow Leanne, and we'll provide some links for you to those resources we talked about in the chat.
Lovely. And